Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Nathan. I'm 31, an electrician by trade, and I run my own company. Three guys work for me, and we handle everything from emergency outages to wiring new commercial builds. The money's steady, the work's honest, and I own the townhouse Brittany and I lived in outright. Brittany, my wife, is 29. She's an assistant manager at a high-end furniture showroom downtown. Her job put her around polished clients, expensive interiors, and coworkers who were obsessed with appearances. Over time, I watched those attitudes rub off on her. At the start, she loved that I had my own business. She told people it was impressive that I owned property and wasn't buried in debt. But a year into marriage, her tone started shifting. Instead of pride, she'd drop comments like, "Nathan, everyone I work with lives in those new glass towers downtown. Our place feels small compared to that. Do you ever think about upgrading your image? People ask me what you do, and it's awkward sometimes." I'd answer the same way every time. Why would I pay rent on a condo when we live in a paid-off home? Security beats optics. But for Brittany, optics were everything. She didn't care that my business cleared 6 figures last year, or that the house was debt-free. She wanted something she could flaunt. Her co-workers, Harper and Lila, fed that fire. Their husbands, Robert and Anthony, had corporate titles: brand strategist, and finance attorney. It wasn't enough that I earned more. Brittany liked the way those titles sounded at dinner parties. One Thursday evening, she dropped it on me casually. "We're going out Saturday. Rooftop place, newest spot in the city. Harper and Lila are bringing Robert and Anthony. You'll finally meet them." I raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly am I supposed to prove there?" She gave a practiced smile. "Nothing. Just look sharp. It's good to show we fit in with the right people." I should have seen what was coming. Saturday night, I put on a clean button-down and a blazer. Brittany spent an hour getting ready. On the drive, she kept checking her reflection in the mirror more than talking to me. The rooftop restaurant was the kind of place where a plate of scallops cost nearly $50, and the wine list had bottles priced higher than a week's paycheck for most people. We were barely seated before Brittany waved down the server and ordered a $200 bottle of red for the table. She didn't ask if I wanted any. Robert and Anthony shook my hand like they were meeting an intern. Robert launched into a story about a branding campaign in Milan, while Anthony bragged about closing on a condo in some downtown tower. When it came time for introductions, Brittany cleared her throat. "This is Nathan," she said flatly. "He handles building maintenance." I looked at her. Building maintenance? I ran my own electrical company, but she couldn't even say the word electrician. Anthony leaned forward. "So you're like the guy who comes when the lights go out?" Before I could answer, Brittany cut in. "Exactly. He keeps things running." The conversation shifted to vacations. Robert described their upcoming trip to Barcelona, and Anthony mentioned a wine tour in Napa. I said Brittany and I had been planning a road trip through the national parks. Brittany gave a tight laugh. "That's more of a starter vacation, something casual, not really the same as a real trip." The table chuckled politely, but I felt the jab. I stayed quiet, letting it slide. Lila leaned in. "So Nathan, what's your long-term plan? Growing the business? Expanding downtown?" I explained, steady and honest. "We've been doing well enough to take on more commercial contracts. I'd rather keep it steady than take on debt just to flash a big office." Brittany's laugh was sharper this time. "See, this is where we disagree. Playing it safe keeps you small. Sometimes you have to think bigger, Nathan. Don't you ever want more than just scraping by with wires and outlets?" I frowned. "Scraping by? Brittany, the company cleared 6 figures last year." Anthony smirked. "Well, 6 figures is comfortable, but it's not exactly life-changing." Brittany seized on it immediately. "Exactly. It's fine for now, but I don't want to just be fine. Not when everyone else is building real futures." Her words carried more edge than I'd ever heard in public. I felt the heat rising, but before I could reply, she leaned forward, voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter. "That's the problem, Nathan. You think doing the bare minimum is enough, but it isn't. You can't even satisfy me, let alone provide for me." The table froze. Harper's fork clinked against her plate. Robert looked away, pretending to check his watch. I didn't raise my voice. I just pushed my chair back, caught the server's attention, and said, "Split checks, please." I paid for my scallops and beer, left cash on the table, and walked out. I drove home alone that night. Brittany didn't call, didn't text. By the time I got in, I realized she hadn't even brought her car. She must have left with her friends. Fine by me. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing. First message. Nathan, I didn't mean it like that. I was frustrated. 10 minutes later. You embarrassed me by walking out. You could have handled it better. Then, I'm staying at Harper's for a few days. We'll talk when you cool off. I didn't respond. I put the phone face down and went to bed. The next morning, I had a service call at a medical clinic, an emergency outage in one of their labs. The job wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. We had power restored in under an hour. As I packed up, I stopped at the coffee shop across the street. That's when I heard someone say my name. Nathan? I turned. It was Claire Matthews, someone I hadn't seen since high school. Back then, she was the sharp, driven one. Now she wore scrubs and a hospital badge. Claire? I said, surprised. It's been years. She smiled. You just saved us. I work at that clinic. Without power, the lab would have been shut down all day. You don't even know what kind of chaos you prevented. I shrugged. Just doing my job. She shook her head. Not just. That mattered. We caught up for a few minutes. Her return to town, her work as an oncology nurse, my company. She laughed when I told her Brittany introduced me as building maintenance. That's ridiculous, she said. You run your own business. That's not small. It was the first real conversation I'd had in days where I didn't feel like I had to justify myself. Before leaving, Claire handed me her number. In case you ever need a nurse's advice, or just coffee. By Monday, Brittany had moved from private texts to public posts. On her Instagram story, she tagged Harper and Lila at some downtown lounge, writing, "Surround yourself with people who aim higher." Another picture showed Robert in a tailored suit with the caption, "Real providers." No names were mentioned, but the dig wasn't subtle. Meanwhile, my week didn't slow down. On Tuesday morning, a restaurant called in a panic. Their grand opening was scheduled for that evening, and half their kitchen circuits had failed. My apprentice, Diego, froze at the sight of the tangled wires inside the service panel, unsure where to start. I stepped in, took control, and methodically traced the fault. By noon, the ovens were running smoothly again. The relief on the owner's face said everything. He had poured everything into that launch, and without power, the entire investment would have collapsed before it even began. The job mattered far more than the wires in front of me. It kept his business alive. When I gave him the price for the repair, he didn't hesitate. He told me it was worth every penny and insisted on placing my company on retainer for monthly checkups and priority calls. From that moment on, his kitchen would only run under my watch. That one job paid more than Brittany's monthly salary at the showroom. That evening, Brittany called. Her tone was clipped. "Corporate's flying in tomorrow. We're hosting a cocktail event at the showroom. I want you there. Look sharp. Talk about your future plans." I was on another job. I wiped sweat off my forehead and answered. "I've got a night shutdown tomorrow. The bakery needs power back before morning deliveries. That's where I'll be." Brittany sighed. "You always choose work over us." "No, I choose work over appearances. There's a difference." She hung up without another word. Friday evening, I pulled into the driveway after a long shift. The porch light caught Brittany standing by the door, arms crossed, as if she had been waiting for me. An overnight bag sat at her feet. She hadn't been living in the house since she left for Harper's, but now she was back with the look of someone trying to move in again. Her expression wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed, calculated, as if she had practiced what she was about to say all week. "Nathan," she said as I walked up, "we need to talk." I set my tool bag down. "Looks like you've already made a decision." She gestured at the luggage. "The condo fell through. They needed a higher verified income. With your business, we could have qualified easily. We're a team, Nathan. You should have been there with me." I unlocked the door and went inside. She followed. "You moved out, Brittany," I reminded her. "Stayed at Harper's, posted about aiming higher, called Robert and Anthony real providers. Now you want me to co-sign for a condo I never agreed to?" Her voice rose. "Because you're too practical. You never dream big. Everyone is stepping up, but you're stuck. Don't you want better for us?" I faced her squarely. Better isn't trading a paid-off house for rented glass walls just so you can brag about it. Before she could answer, a car pulled into the driveway. Claire stepped out, carrying takeout bags and a bottle of sparkling water. She waved. "Evening, Nathan. Figured you could use a break after that bakery shutdown. Brittany stiffened. Who's this? I didn't hesitate. Claire. We went to school together. She's a nurse. She dropped by to say thanks. Claire looked between us, sensing the tension. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, I said. You're welcome here. Brittany's voice cracked. So you've replaced me already? Just like that? I kept my tone level. You packed your things and left. You can't walk back in with suitcases and pretend nothing happened. Her eyes flashed. You'll regret this. You think she respects you more than I do? She doesn't even know you. I opened the door. Then let's not waste any more time. Take your bags. She dragged the suitcases out, slammed them into the trunk of her car, and peeled off down the street. Inside, Claire set the takeout on the counter. Want me to go? I shook my head. No, stay. You brought dinner. Let's eat. The following Saturday, Brittany's showroom was hosting its biggest event of the year. I hadn't planned on being anywhere near it, but work had me downtown that afternoon. Around 7, my phone buzzed. It was Harper. Nathan, I know this is awkward, but we need you. The lights just cut out in the showroom. Half the chandeliers are dead and the backup system isn't kicking in. Brittany's panicking. The corporate team is here. I paused. Don't you have a building engineer? They're not answering. Please, if you can get here, you'll save us. I was 2 blocks away, finishing a job at a dental office. 10 minutes later, I walked into the showroom. The place was buzzing with nervous chatter. In the middle of the floor, Brittany stood pale, whispering with Robert and Anthony. She saw me and froze. Nathan? I didn't answer her. I walked straight to the breaker room. 5 minutes later, the chandeliers flared back to life. The crowd broke into applause as if I'd just performed magic. The regional director pulled me aside. You own an electric company? Impressive work under pressure. We've been looking for a reliable service partner. Can you handle contracts for multiple locations? Absolutely, I said. Let's schedule a walkthrough on Monday. We shook hands. He gave me his card and thanked me again. When I came back onto the floor, Brittany stood off to the side, her expression unreadable. She just watched the same man she called not enough fix the disaster her whole career event was hanging on. I left before Brittany could corner me. As I walked out, I caught sight of her reflection in the glass doors, staring after me, caught between humiliation and regret. 2 days after the showroom blackout, Brittany texted me, "Can we meet?" Just to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only at a neutral spot, a cafe near the river. She arrived early, dressed down in a plain sweater, no designer tags in sight. For once, she looked less like she was performing. Nathan, she started, voice softer than I'd heard in months. I was wrong. The dinner, the things I said, I don't know what came over me. I let pressure get to me. That night, when you saved everything, I realized what I threw away. I stirred my coffee slowly. What exactly did you realize? That I judged you by the wrong things. Titles, appearances, all of it. I thought if we didn't look a certain way, people would see us as less. But you've proven you can provide better than anyone I know. I shook my head. Respect isn't something you trade in when it's convenient. You can't snap at me in front of strangers, call me less of a man, and expect an apology to erase it. She leaned forward. So you're saying there's no chance? None at all? I'm saying words don't change habits. You've said sorry before. What's different now? What action changes tomorrow? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She couldn't name one thing. After a long silence, I stood. Take care of yourself, Brittany. I hope you figure out what you actually want. That week, my phone buzzed with a different kind of message. Robert, yes, the same Robert from that rooftop dinner, emailed me asking for a quote on a full electrical upgrade at his firm's new office. I brought Diego along for the walkthrough. By Friday, I'd added another contract to the books, enough to justify hiring a second apprentice. Meanwhile, Brittany faded from my life. Word got around that she'd moved back in with her mother. Eventually, I filed for divorce. The process was straightforward. No children, no shared mortgage, no joint business. The townhouse had been mine before the marriage, and the company was entirely in my name. There wasn't much for her to claim. She requested a portion of the joint savings, and I let it go without a fight. Within a few months, the court finalized everything, and I walked away with my home, my business, and my independence fully intact. Brittany texted one last time. I need to return your keys. When can we meet? We agreed to meet in the park by the river, where the benches overlooked the water. I got there first, the hum of the city softened by the current below. She arrived carrying the spare set of keys I'd given her when we first moved in. She sat beside me and slid them across the bench. I never should have said those things, she whispered. I cared too much about how it looked. Everyone around me kept pushing the idea that image is everything. I believed it. And I hurt you in front of people who didn't matter. I nodded, keeping my tone calm. I appreciate the honesty now. But Brittany, what you said at that dinner wasn't just a slip. It showed me what you really thought. You didn't defend me once in that group. You sided with strangers against your husband. She blinked hard like she might cry, but I didn't waver. You told me I couldn't satisfy you, that I couldn't provide. I've built a business from nothing. I own my home. I pay my own way. That night said more about you than it did about me. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she didn't have a comeback. I stood and said, I'm not angry anymore, but I'm done negotiating respect. That part isn't optional. She gave a small nod, gathered her bag, and walked off down the path without looking back. Driving home from a late call a few nights later, I passed one of those downtown towers Britney once worshipped, all glass and steel glowing against the skyline. For a second, I thought about the path she'd wanted. Then I drove on. I don't need to sit at rooftop tables to prove my worth. I pay my own check, and now I choose exactly who sits with me. Thank you for watching.